after this break.
Current affairs, facts and opinion, their future in our hands. Markets, globalist technocrats versus the people. A line in the sand. The McIntyre Report.
Welcome back to McIntyre Report. Folks, we've been talking here about, Russia's escalation. Of course, if you listen to the mainstream media, they're going to blame Russia for the escalation. But of course, it was NATO that escalated this war, and Russia basically has to defend itself, and it has a right to. And I think the sooner they end the war, the better for everyone. Unfortunately, on both sides, a large amount of loss of 10-to-1 kill ratio Ukrainian soldiers, because in Ukraine there's enough brainwashed Western Ukrainians that are all being conscripted and given no choice and sent to the front lines where they have, and Zelensky, that's why there's a lot of arguments between Zelensky and the head of the Ukrainian military, because Zelensky doesn't care about loss of life. He'll just send in people, cannon fodder. Ukrainians just get wiped out. Up to 1,000 soldiers in Ukrainian military dying many days, 500 to 1,000 on most days. Estimated losses of over 100,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers already. That's expected to jump to 200,000 by Christmas. That's not to times that by 3, or close to 300,000 dead or injured. The Ukrainian military is being wiped out at a rapid rate, and they should just simply stop the war. They don't want Eastern Ukraine, or they claim they do. If they wanted Eastern Ukraine, the Ukrainians should have been bombing Eastern Ukrainians for the last 8 years. They shouldn't have allowed a legal coup. They should have done what Zelensky promised he would do and unite the country and give them autonomy in those areas, but he chose not to do that. So who will win this war? Russia versus NATO. Who will win? Well, for those who believe in human freedoms and civil liberties, that don't support the Great Reset, where you'll own nothing, be completely you'll own nothing, and happy eating bugs and insects and taking a 50-second booster for a falsified pandemic, then you'll want to hope Russia wins this war. As we know, the West wants World War III. The cabal, these Western oligarchs are going down. That's why we are here now, in the third week of September. The next 6 to 8 weeks is probably the most crucial time in our human history that we've been alive on this planet, because leading up to US midterm elections, you must be very aware of potentials for false flags to be carried out by the deep state, and even a major false flag like a mini nuke on American city to blame and frame Russia so they can go in and attack Russia military. So Russia has every right to be escalating as far as sending in apparently 800 aircraft, etc. more, to end this war in Ukraine and push back and stop NATO that's trying to destroy them. Also, central bank digital currencies, this was no longer conspiracies. Multiple reports coming around the world now that they're admitting that they are planning to introduce digital bank currency. So all along they smashed and crashed and defamed and cryptocurrencies. They actually didn't. They like cryptocurrencies. They just didn't like you or cryptocurrencies where they don't have control of them. So central bankers, Rothschilds, want control of digital currency. So they're working with our governments around the world, Western governments, to introduce a digital currency. This is a totalitarian step they've been planning for some time, because digital currency will mean that they can absolutely control every aspect of your life. They want to get rid of cash because cash gives you power. They can't take it off you, but with digital currencies, they can track, trace, expire them, turn them off on you, shut you out of the digital banking system for something you might post on Facebook that it goes against community guidelines, such as telling the truth. And this is where the world's heading rapidly. So we must push back. That's why it's so critical. Putin and Russia, we give them support. And so they win. We should not be in Australia, the government supporting the Nazis in Ukraine, which is, we're going to end up on the wrong side of the war in World War III. Putin and Russia are the few that are standing up to these globalists. The globalists are on their knees, and it's time to eliminate them once and for all and free this world. Now, that's my opinion. You don't have to agree with that, but you'll find many people do that are awake. The only people that disagree with that tend to be people that watch the Idiot Box and think they're not idiots. The Idiot Box is propaganda, a Western media propaganda, which is owned and funded by the oligarchs. The same climate people behind the climate change fraud are the same oligarchs behind the COVID fraud. And the sooner people wake up to both, the better. They're infiltrating the green movements around the world. And it's not that we all don't care for the environment, but agreeing to the Great Reset, a police state, surveillance, global communism state is not going to do anything for the environment. It's a scam used to remove your powers and control you, just as electric vehicles will be. They'll be able to want only electric vehicles, which don't help the environment, destroy the environment, just simply are not going to work. Renewables are an absolute fraud. I used to believe in them, but I've done my homework, folks, and you can listen to people independently that have. They're a fraud. If people really don't want coal and cheap energy, how about they go turn off their electricity account, go buy some firewood, sit in the cold, and use candlelight and cancel their electricity account. But no, these people are hypocrites. They're not prepared to do that. The people saying that we're responsible for climate change and we have to stop flying and stop doing these things. They're flying around on private jets while we're meant to eat bugs and insects. They're eating premium beef and caviar, and they're buying multi-million-dollar homes like Obama and Al Gore on beachside locations, which, according to them, I thought the oceans were going to rise, and why would they be doing that? So don't fall for the crisis. Well done to Sky News in Australia. They're only part of mainstream media that occasionally tells the truth. Let's have a look at this video on the climate crisis.
Back onto the climate change debate. And as you know, anytime there's a natural disaster now, your ABC or other media, they like to pin the blame on climate change.
Heavy rainfall like that causing flooding this week is set to intensify.
Climate change is now embedded in all extreme weather events.
Record monsoon rains and melting glaciers in Pakistan's northern mountains have caused widespread flooding. Experts say the disaster bears the hallmarks of a changing climate.
Even the new king loves to link the C words, climate and catastrophe.
It will be a disaster. I mean, it'll be catastrophic. It is already beginning to be catastrophic because nothing in nature can survive the stress that is created by these extremes of weather.
Well, a new study of major weather events has found no evidence we're living in a climate emergency. The international paper analysed drought, floods and tornadoes and found no evidence to support an increase in extreme weather events. Now, for more on this, I'm joined by Graham Lloyd, who's the environment editor with the Australian newspaper, a colleague of mine. Good to talk to you again, Graham. I should start off, as you would like to point out, and I would like to point out, this doesn't mean we deny climate change or we deny that some action shouldn't be taken, but it does, this study does disprove the idea that we're living in a catastrophe already.
It certainly does, Chris. It's an interesting paper. It was appeared in International Journal this month, and it shows that looking at the physical record of past extreme weather events, it is not possible to detect a climate emergency at this point in time. They don't say that there isn't an increase in temperature. They don't say that that will never be the case. But as things stand, it is not possible to see that footprint there. And it's an interesting position to take. It's quite controversial, but as you and I'm sure many viewers would know, really this is the position that the IPCC and others have come to it over a long period of time, that it is not possible to say any single event is produced by climate change. But the politics of climate change has seen extreme weather really take the front line in trying to galvanise action. So it's resulted in what's called attribution science, where there's a whole new branch that's dedicated towards using probabilistic models to determine whether or not the change in climate has had any impact on events that have taken place. This is quite controversial. The efficacy of models is keenly debated, and I think the significance of this paper, although many will challenge it, is that it shows if you look at the physical record rather than the probabilistic record, there's no great signature there at this point in time.
Yeah, it's not surprising to those of us who have followed it closely. And as you say, when you look at IPC reports and the like, they tend to talk about it will lead to more natural disasters or lead to these effects. It doesn't say it's already happening. And the media gets carried away, though. The most common word they use is unprecedented. For instance, they'll talk about unprecedented flooding because there was one record in Lismore. And even though it's not a broken rainfall record, there's all sorts of other factors that will affect the height of a flood. I've done it with bushfires in this country. There's been so much talk about unprecedented bushfires. But if you go back in just the media record since European settlement, you can see bushfires that were bigger, bushfires that were earlier in certain areas. And, of course, across the country, we've had many bushfires where many more people have died. So we should respect the records we have, shouldn't we?
Well, that's right, and I think a complaint that's made by a lot of people is the goalposts keep shifting on those records. So when we hear this is unprecedented or the biggest or longest on record, often those records only go back a relatively short period of time. And obviously with issues of climate and extreme weather, you have to look at a very, very broad picture. And the difficulty in the climate science area is that natural variability has great extremes. And we're probably going to have to wait for quite some time before these events break outside of those extreme ranges to be able to make any significant call on it. And really, this paper is interesting in it doesn't say, look, there's no problem, but it does say that the problems we have in terms of land use, pollution and all sorts of other things are the ones that perhaps there is an emergency of some sort, and we should really be focusing on those.
Yeah, there are a lot of issues, environmental issues, that we can tackle and can improve with what we know now, yet they seem all to be swept aside in the public debate by climate change. Always good to talk to you, Graham.
Good on you, thanks.
Graham Lloyd there, you can read his stuff in the Australian newspaper.
Well done, Chris Kenny. I don't always agree with you, but Sky News at least, it's probably what we consider controlled opposition. We don't appreciate what they push with the vaccine mandates, the Murdoch empire, but outside of that, News Corp generally supports the right side of politics, and Tucker Carlson, of course, and Fox News is a great, supporter of the freedom movement, so to speak, against the globalist agenda and the fraud of the climate crisis. But it's true there what they're saying. It's not that, we're environmental deniers. Why wouldn't I and anyone else care for the environment? But we could address the real issues in the environment are not being addressed because it's a scam going on with the climate change. That's why they changed the name from global warming theory, Al Gore. These are people predominantly pushing this. These are elites. But they've never gone out and built businesses. They generally make their money by scamming taxpayers, and basically all you have to do is get politicians on your side or scare the government, and they'll just hand over billions of dollars. It's not their money. It's your money. So the real climate changes, we won't go into too much now, but the real, environmental issues on the planet is Seaspiracy is a great documentary to watch. The overfishing of our oceans and the potential collapse of our oceans as a food source. That is probably our greatest environmental crisis we're facing, and that's simply not being addressed, and nothing to do with climate change. Now, if we're going to look at what the causes of climate change are, there needs to be an investigation into geoengineering, weather weapons, and cloud seeding. It's now no longer a conspiracy theory. It's well documented. You can go onto YouTube and even other sources, and you'll find, and we'll do more on this, a lot of evidence of pretty much every government in the world for decades has been doing cloud seeding, weather manipulation to varying degrees of success. And then obviously the deep state and DARPA, they do have weather weapons. And many believe that these weather weapons and the constant putting of chemicals in the atmosphere, has led to possibly causing these problems in the environment. So after the break, we'll be back to let's look at that in some of the things that's been happening in the environment. And is this a result of climate change or more likely as a result of the elites deliberately causing issues, either deliberately with the weather or inadvertently from trying to play God too much?